The majority has 13 minutes left.
Mr. President, President Bush has spent the last 2 weeks talking up the progress we're making in Iraq, and talking down the Democrats and some of our Republican colleagues for trying to bring this war to a responsible end. But sometimes it's a problem. You have to deal with the facts. And the facts are not as the president wants them to be, but as they exist on the ground. And the fact is the president is totally out of touch with reality. He's out of touch with the American people, and he's out of touch with America's interest in the region. I've been here a while, Mr. President, and I can say I have never seen a president as isolated since Richard Nixon. The president appears to be totally removed from reality. He tells us that Attorney General Gonzales has done a great job when anyone who watched it views it as one of the least impressive appearances of an Attorney General. He tells us that the President of the World Bank, an American, is doing a great job oblivious to the damage being done to America's reputation around the world. And against the advice of some of the most gifted military men and women in a generation, he's adopted a policy in Iraq that is a disaster. The president argues that the siege is succeeding, but with every welcome development he cites, there's an equally unwelcome development that gives a lie to the claim that we're truly making any progress. For example, while death squad violence against Iraqis is down in some Baghdad neighborhoods where we have surged, suicide bombings have increased by 30% over the last 6 weeks. The violence is up dramatically in the ring of the belt ringing Baghdad. Civilian death tolls have increased 15% from March to February. When we squeeze the water balloon in one place, Mr. President, it bulges somewhere else. And Sadr, although he's not been seen but he's been heard, rallying his followers with anti-American messages, and his thugs take on American troops in the South. Last week, he pulled his ministers from the coalition government, and intelligence experts believe his militia is simply waiting out the surge. Closing markets to vehicles has precluded some car bombs, but has also promoted terrorists to change tactics and walk in with suicide vests. The road to the airport to Baghdad may be safer, but the skies above it are more lethal. Witness the ironic imposition of a no-fly zone for our own helicopters. And Tal Afar is the most damaging evidence of the absolute absurdity of this policy. The president cites it as progress. Architects of the President plan call that city Tal Afar a model because in 2005, we surged about 10,000 Americans and Iraqis to pacify the city. Then we left, just as our troops will have to leave the Baghdad neighborhoods after calm is established, if it is. But what happened in Tal Afar? Tal Afar was the scene of some of the most horrific sectarian violence to date. A massive truck bomb aimed at the Shiite community led to a retaliatory rampage by Shiite death squads, aided by Iraqi police. Hundreds were killed. The population of Tal Afar, which was 200,000 people just a year or two ago, is down to 80,000 people. There is even more basic problem with the President's progress report, and it goes to the heart of the choices we now face in Iraq. Whatever tactical progress we may be making will amount to nothing if it's not serving a larger strategy for success. The administration's strategy has virtually no progress for success. And its strategy in a nutshell is it hopes that the surge will buy President Maliki's government time to broker a sustainable political settlement that our own military views as essential, that is premised upon the notion of a central government in Baghdad with real power. But there's no trust within the government, no trust of the government by the people it purports to serve, no capacity on the part of the government to deliver security services. And there's little of any prospect that this government will build that trust and capacity soon. How many times have my colleagues heard, beginning in January, how there's an oil agreement, how they've gotten that deal? Has anybody seen that deal? Has anybody, after we have heralded time and again as essential to pull this country together? In short, the most basic premise of the President's approach, that the Iraqi people will rally behind a strong central government headed up by Maliki, in fact, will look out for their interest equitably, is fundamentally and fatally flawed. It will not happen in anybody's lifetime here, including the Pages. If the President won't work to a program that is different than he's now pursuing, if his plan doesn't work, what will? Well, history suggests there's only a couple ways. That when there's a self-sustaining cycle of sectarian violence, to end it. And it's not to put American troops in the middle of a city of 6.2 million people to try to quell a civil war. Throughout history, four things have worked. You occupy the country for a generation or more. That's not in our DNA. We're not the Persian Empire or the British Empire. You install a dictator. Wouldn't that be the ultimate irony for the United States, to go back after taking one down and install another one? You let them fight it out till one side massacres the other. Not an option in that tinderbox part of the world. Or lastly, you make federalism work for the Iraqis. You give them control over the fabric of their daily lives. You separate the parties. You give them breathing room. Let them control their local police, their education, their religion, their marriage. That's the only possibility. Change the focus to a limited central government and a federal system that their Constitution calls for. I can't guarantee that my strategy will work, but I can guarantee that the road the President has us on leads to nowhere with no end in sight. We have to change course, Mr. President, to end this war responsibly. And that's what we're trying to do here in the Congress. Later this week, we'll send to the President an emergency supplemental bill on Iraq. It provides every dollar our troops need and more than the President requested. It also provides what a majority of experts believe is necessary, a plan to start to bring our troops home and bring this war to a responsible end, not escalate it indefinitely. If the President vetoes the emergency spending bill, Mr. President, he's the one who will be denying our troops the funding they need. He's the one that will be denying the American people a path out of Iraq. The President's double talk on Iraq is reaching new heights of hypocrisy, and I don't say that lightly. New heights of hypocrisy. On April 16th, the President claimed that setting a timetable to start bringing our troops home, quote, would legislate defeat. Just 2 days after that, 2 days later, his own Secretary of Defense had this to say, quote, the push by Democrats to set a timetable for U.S. withdrawal from Iraq has been helpful in showing Iraqis that American patience is limited, that this is not an open-ended commitment, end of quote. Then, arguing against the supplemental, the President claimed that by sending him a bill, he would somehow be forced to veto, that the military would run out of money for Iraq in mid-April, which is not true, by the way. And as a result, he would have to extend the tours of duty to the troops already in Iraq. Extending those tours, the President said, quote, I'm quoting the President now, is unacceptable. It's unacceptable to me. It's unacceptable to our veterans. It's unacceptable to our military families. And it's unacceptable to many in this country, end of quote. Unacceptable? The very next day, the administration announced its plans to do the unacceptable. It extended the tours for every American ground troop by 3 months on the ground. Talk about hypocrisy. Telling us a path out of Iraq is a way in which it's forcing him to veto a bill that will require him then to extend tours because of that veto, and that's unacceptable.